All right, so for this deep dive, we're going to be talking about solo travel.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, it's something that more and more people are doing, and it's not just like backpacking through Europe anymore.
Right, right. It can be anything, really. A weekend at the beach, a museum tour, anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about that freedom to choose your own adventure.
Right.
Like nobody's telling you what to do or where to go. It's all you.
It's amazing how much it's changed. It used to be like this niche thing, but now it's almost like everyone's considering it at some point.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
there are so many reasons why people are drawn to it. I mean, obviously there's that sense of freedom and independence that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But it's also a chance to like really connect with yourself and the world around you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're more open to new experiences and new people when you're on your own.
Totally. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about solo travel. People think it's going to be lonely,
Right.
but in reality, it's actually a great way to meet new people. Like you're more approachable when you're by yourself.
And you're more likely to strike up conversations with locals and other travelers. You're not like caught up in your own little group.
Exactly. And those conversations can be so enriching. You learn so much about different cultures and perspectives.
It's amazing how much you can learn just from talking to people.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the benefits of solo travel. We've touched on a few already, like the freedom, the independence, the chance to meet new people. But there's so much more to it than that.
It's true. There are so many benefits. One of the biggest ones, I think, is self-discovery.
Oh, definitely.
Like, when you're traveling solo, you're constantly being pushed outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
You have to figure things out on your own. You have to rely on yourself. And in doing so, you discover all sorts of things about yourself that you never knew before.
Like how resourceful you are.
Exactly. Or how brave you are. Or how much you actually enjoy your own company.
Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people are afraid to be alone with their own thoughts. But solo travel forces you to confront them. And you know what? It's not always a bad thing.
No, not at all. In fact, it can be really liberating.
So I think it's safe to say that solo travel is an incredible opportunity for personal growth.
For sure.
But let's be real, it can also be daunting, especially if you've never done it before.
Absolutely.
So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about taking their first solo trip?
Well, I think the most important thing is to do your research and plan ahead. Figure out where you want to go, what you want to see, how much it's going to cost.
Sure.
And don't be afraid to start small. You don't have to, fly across the world for your first solo trip. You could just do a weekend getaway to a nearby city.
That's a good point.
And then once you get a feel for it, you can start branching out and trying more adventurous things.
That's great advice. So once you've done your research and you've planned your trip, what's next? What should people pack?
Well, obviously the essentials will vary depending on where you're going and what you're doing. But there are a few things that I always recommend bringing on any solo trip.
Okay, let's hear it. What are your must-haves?
Okay, see. Definitely a good guidebook, even if you're not the type of person who likes to follow itineraries. It's always helpful to have a guidebook on hand for reference.
Makes sense.
And then, of course, all the usual travel essentials like a comfortable pair of shoes, a backpack, a first aid kit.
Yeah.
But there are also a few things that are specific to solo travel. Like, I always recommend bringing a journal.
Oh, a journal. Interesting. Why is that?
Well, it's a great way to document your experiences and reflect on your journey.
Right.
And it can also be a really helpful tool for staying grounded and connected to yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed or lonely.
That's a good point. I never really thought about it that way.
And another thing that I always recommend is bringing a small token from home, like a photograph or a piece of jewelry.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, it's just something to remind you of home and the people you love when you're feeling homesick.
I like that. That's really thoughtful.
Yeah.
So you've got your guidebook, your journal, your token from home, and all your other essentials packed. What about safety? That's something that a lot of people worry about when they're traveling solo, especially women.
Yeah, that's understandable. But, the world is a lot safer than we often give it credit for. And there are a lot of things you can do to stay safe while you're traveling solo.
Okay, like what?
Well, first of all, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. And don't be afraid to say no to people or situations that make you uncomfortable.
That's good advice.
And always be aware of your surroundings. Don't walk around with your headphones in or your nose buried in your phone.
Makes sense.
And it's also a good idea to let someone know where you're going and when you expect to be back.
Right, like a family member or a friend.
Exactly. And if you're using social media, be careful about what you post. You don't want to advertise to the world that you're traveling alone.
That's a really good point.
And finally, just use common sense. Don't flash your cash around, don't drink too much alcohol, and be careful about who you trust.
All good advice.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the benefits of solo travel, the challenges, the planning, the packing, the safety. Anything else you want to add?